Om yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarottam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi. So, in the last class, we were studying the various vibhutis, the various supernatural powers that a yogi may develop on his spiritual journey. We studied till the 41st Sutra. Today, we will take up from the 42nd Sutra. There are some another 8 sutras which has been dedicated to these various supernatural powers that one may develop on his spiritual journey. And on though this chapter is named Vibhuti Pada, but we will find the last few sutras from the 50th sutra onwards, another 5-6 sutras, though those sutras are in the Vibhuti Pada, but they actually gives an introduction to the Kaivalya Pada, the last chapter, which speaks that if we don't get deviated by the supernatural powers and can keep ourselves fixed in our goal, which will lead to the Kaivalya, the ultimate liberation, how it happens, how it ensues, what's the psychological process behind it. So that last chapter will be dealing with that, for which the introduction will start in this chapter itself from the 50th sutra for another 5-6 sutras. So today we will try to complete the discussion on the various supernatural powers which has been spoken of in the Vibhuti Pada, the last 8 sutras which we will be studying today, dealing with the supernatural powers, to start with the 42nd, and we will end up with the 49th. The 8 vibhutis will be spoken of, one after the other. So let us go to the 42nd sutra of the 3rd chapter. What it's speaking, Kaya Akashayo Sambandha Samyamat Laghu Tula Samapatte Cha Akasha Gamanam. So these are the things. I don't know whether anyone has experienced or witnessed or not, but these sutras are mentioned. Of course, its relevance is there. But yes, to be very frank, I have not seen, or I don't know whether anyone has seen, successfully practicing this type of practices. And as such, as we have mentioned, it has nothing to do with our spiritual growth. It just speaks that if we can take our psyche, if our psychological state to certain state of awareness, we can develop those supernatural powers. What it is speaking of? Akasha Gamanam, leviation. It speaks of the leviation. So we have found that for the last few decades, there were many such camps who have claimed, but most of them ends up to be a fraud. We do never find that really some has been possible. But Swami Vivekananda in one place has told nice thing, that when you find that there is some fraudulent practice, it speaks that they're trying to imitate which something is genuine. Might be somewhere someone genuinely has practiced those things, which at present they're in their attempt to imitate, it ends up in some fraudulent practices, as they are not very sincere about it. But let us go to the sutra and try to understand what it is saying, what's the science behind it. Kaya Akashayo Sambandha Samyamat. If you try to concentrate on the link between Kaya, means this body, and Akasha, the space, then what you will realize that this body is actually like Laghu Tula Samapat. It's just like a cotton wool. The cotton wool you will find is floating with a little wind. It's so light, it just floats in the air. So they say if we meditate, if we really try to find out the relation between the body and the space, invariably you will find that the relation is something like the space and the cotton wool. The cotton wool is very light because actually it is something very puffed. Inside it is air and air alone, and it floats in the air. And if you can really visualize this, that your body is nothing but just like a cotton wool, it's mostly space and space alone, then it can enable you to leviate. So this is something which we are not going to practice, but let us try to understand what this sutra is speaking of. But is it really our bodies like cotton wool? Even with the common science, you will understand what it is speaking is something which is a fact. Any solid matter, where I'm sitting, the chair, the table, it appears to be very solid. But is it solid? But after all, even our body is made up of cells. The table is made up of atoms. Even the cells, at last, we will find is nothing but molecules and atoms. Even these atoms, what they say? That there is a nucleus where the protons are there and the neutrons are there. And around it, around the nucleus, the electrons are moving around. But what's the distance between the electrons and the nucleus? So they say it's almost like the distance between the sun and the planets. If I can enlarge the atom to that of this our planetary existence, the nucleus, the sun will be like something like the nucleus, and like the planets at a huge distance, the electrons are moving. You forget about the planets and the sun. Just let us take a football ground for understanding what it's speaking of. If the nucleus is just the football kept in the center of the football ground, then the entire ground is empty. Someone most probably is running around the stadium. So that's the electron. Most of the place is space. That's the atom by which anything is made, even the solid thing is made. It's mainly space and space alone. When we say anything is solid, it's the limitation of our senses that makes us feel it as solid. It's the limitation of the senses. It's not solid. With a common example, you will understand. The electrons are at huge distance from the nucleus. But yes, they're moving very fast, extremely fast. And as a result, that gives the notion of solid. With a very preliminary science understanding, we need not go to the higher advanced science, because for most of us, those who are not very familiar with the scientific advanced theories, it will be very, very difficult to understand this. But with a very common example, you all will understand. Just suppose we take the fan which is revolving in the summer season. So when the fan is not revolving, you may see 3 or 4 blades distinctly visible. But when the fan starts revolving, do we see the blades? The blades are no more visible. It appears as a disc. Why it happens? We do not see that most of the place is space, but I don't see the space. I see it as a disc. Why it appears as a disc? Because there is something called the retention capacity of our eye. It's a limitation of our vision. That the moment when I'm seeing something, that thing moves out from my vision, and within a very small fraction of time, something else comes into my vision. I still retain the previous vision, and this gets overlapped with the current vision. And that's how the movie is possible. In your TV, actually, it's only dots. The dots are traveling so fast that gives you the sense, the feeling of the moving pictures. But it's actually dots moving very fast. The previous dots are retained when the next dots are coming into your vision. And that gives the sense of a picture. If you remember, in our childhood days in the school, many of us to understand this retention capacity of our eye, did one experiment. In my school days, I did it. In a paper, in one side, we used to draw a cage. On the other side, opposite side, a bird. And with a stick, we have to rotate the page in such a way that in our vision, once the page gets turned, the cage comes, and the very next moment, the birds come in our vision. If you do it for some time, immediately you will feel that the bird is as if inside the cage. What is happening? By the time the bird is moving out of your vision and the cage is coming, it is still retaining the vision of the bird. And as a result, you see the bird in the cage. So this is called the retention capacity of the eye. Because of that, all the movies which we see, it's all actually static photographs, which are moving very fast, giving you the notion of video, this moving picture. Actually, no video camera takes the motion as such. It is taking the shot of each of the small, minute intervals at the minute time lapse of these static photos, which moves very fast to give you a notion that it's a video, it's a motion picture. It's actually not analogous, it's digital. It's breaking actually, but it's so fast, it gives the notion of motion. So similarly here, when the electrons are moving so fast, it gives, our eyes cannot even catch it. It gives a notion of something which is continuing, solid. You may say, if that's the case, why my hand doesn't penetrate? It's actually not something solid interacting with the solid. It's the field created by the atoms of your body which interacts with the field of the other. This is the clash of the field. It is not the real clash of some matter which doesn't allow one to penetrate to the other. If anything was really solid, you couldn't have thought of vaccination. You couldn't have think of the needle entering, piercing your body if the body was real solid. There is a lot of space. The needle can enter your body, immediately will make you convinced of the fact it's space alone. It's space and space alone. So now when the Sutra is speaking that to think of the body as light as the cotton wool is not something which is a mere imagination, it's a fact. In our day-to-day experience, we think it is our weight which doesn't allow us to float, but it's not the fact. It's not the weight alone. It is the weight, it's with the relation of the internal pressure. The body have an internal pressure. If it was not there, the tremendous atmospheric pressure would have collapsed us. We would have just simply crushed. The body has an internal pressure which matches with that atmospheric pressure to keep us intact. Not only that, even the gravitation is a tremendous force. It would have made us, it would have crushed us. Is the internal pressure which creates that a type of buoyancy. If weight was alone the factor which doesn't allow us to as if float, then in the moon with the same weight, it's when with our same mass, I won't say the same weight, when you're going to the moon, as the gravitation is less and your internal body pressure remains the same that with what you have been in the earth. So that gives a sense of buoyancy. There you will find that a little movement is as if you're floating. Just you jump, you can, if here you can jump as a high jumper for 4 feet, 5 feet, there you can easily jump for almost the double. So why it's happening? That buoyancy you're getting because the internal body pressure in relation to the gravitation the pressure is more. The gravitation compared to that is less. That gives you the buoyancy. It's everywhere. Just when we are trying to float in water, we get drowned. The huge ship, that huge weight, how it is floating. Again, the same thing. Its structure is such that it makes it buoyant. the internal, that's what you say, the surface area compared to the wet is much, much higher. So that gives it the buoyancy. So this is the thing which has been indicated in the sutra, that what has happened, that visualization is very important, that we have got fixed with the notion that my body won't allow me to float. With pranayama, we can increase the internal, this what you say, that the air pressure, that you can become more buoyant, and that along with that, if the visualization is done, if pranayama accompanied by visualization is very important. Nowadays, you go to sports, any game, if you just listen to the interview long back, Muhammad Ali's, recently Tiger Woods, they all speak that about 80% of their success actually depends on visualization. Before the game, before any competition, they first visualize. If you just go to the, what you say, the sumo, for the sumos, the way they fight, the visualization becomes an important factor. It is a visualization that enables them to gain some physical competency. There are a lot of experiments on it. Even without flexing your muscle, it's a real experiment. Even you can search in the internet. Various athlete groups have done it, and with success they have done it, that you need not flex your muscle. For about a month, just sit and visualize that you're flexing your muscles. Your muscles will grow. That actually your mind's conditioning has to do with our body. We are psychosomatic. The word which is used is psychosomatic. Your psychology, it is the mind which determines what will be your body structure. So, even in the life of Ramakrishna, there's a wonderful example. When he was doing sadhana in dasya bhava, as a servant, with a servant attitude, that Lord is the master, I am the servant. For that, he took Hanuman as the role model. Thinking himself as Hanumana, he continued with his sadhana. And he found that there's a growing of tail, the coccyx region has grown. Just as the Hanuman has a tail, it grew just by the visualization. It's something which is recorded. If you read the Leela Prasanga, the Ramakrishna, the great master, the biography of Ramakrishna, there it is mentioned. You will find that when Ramakrishna was doing the sadhana in dasya bhava, thinking himself as Hanumana, this coccyx region grew, from where we have the structure of the tail, just by visualization. So visualization do play a great role in affecting our body. So when you think yourself in a certain way, so what happens? It actually, the visualization works, it raises our awareness. It changes our awareness by directing the focused attention to the things we want, overcoming the brain's tendency to protect itself from anything new. We always try to be in the secure zone. Anything new we want to avoid. So the visualization actually is helping us to go beyond those conditionings. By visualization, we go beyond and raise our level of awareness. And with that, this type of supernatural power most probably is possible. But again, we are just doing what you said, the justice to the text. I have not seen anyone doing it. And till now, whoever has claimed at last has been found to be some, it's a fraud. It's a fraudulent attempt. It has never till now, we have never found anyone to be genuine. I have seen quite a number of videos which actually is a caricature of so-called leviation. It's not the leviation which we are speaking of here. So in the let us proceed to the next sutra, the 43rd sutra. So it actually is something which helps in our spiritual evolution, though it's a supernatural power, but it's not harmful. As we will read the sutra, you will find the importance of it. Bahi akalpita vritti mahavideha tatah prakasha avarana kshaya. What it is speaking? Bahi akalpita vritti. Kalpita means imagination. You have to practice dharana. That's you're sitting, but you are not in the body. You are everywhere. Or you may think, yes, you can just think that you are permeating the entire space. You are not just in the body. My amness doesn't end in the skin boundary. It permeates the entire existence. At the beginning, it is kalpita, it is imagination. But with the practice, this visualization becomes so strong, you start palpably feeling you are everywhere. The next phrase is also important, mahavideha. When you're trying to practice that mindfulness, that my amness is something which pervades everything. It is not just within the body, it's everywhere. First, you will find that you have the awareness of your amness within the body as well as outside. To give an example, a novice in a Buddhist monastery was asked to meditate. What was the meditation? Mindfulness. You need not have to concentrate on any particular idea. Just be mindful, sit straight, breathe normally. Whatever is going on in this present atmosphere, just observe objectively. If anything is happening within the body, think, yes, I am just observing. It is not that it is my body which I am observing. I am just observing the happenings of the body as well as what is happening outside. So the novice is relating a very interesting thing, that as I was sitting for quite long, I started developing pain in my knees. Now, I was told that when you have any bodily discomfort, don't try to relax by moving that leg. Just think that pain is not you. You are separate from it, and you just observe. Means just you will be observing, not reacting. The moment you move your leg, you're reacting to the pain. So don't react. Just observe. That is the practice. It is something which is giving you some discomfort, but that will help you. Try to do that. So after a few days, this novice is relating a wonderful thing. That when I was just observing my pain, trying to be objective, suddenly that some birds was chirping sitting on the tree near the meditation hall. Outside in a tree, a bird was sitting and the bird started chirping. And suddenly I felt I'm observing both in the same objective manner. That chirping also is as objective as my pain. And then I understood, yes, that I have to a certain extent succeeded in my meditation, that I can observe the pain as objectively as the chirping of the bird. But here what is happening, though you're observing both, still you have the sensation of the body, that the body pain also I'm observing, as well as I'm observing the chirping of the bird. So still you don't have the sense of videha, that I am not the body, still it's not there. You're still observing. So initially the mind is both inside as well as outside. When it becomes mahavideha, when by the practice you get totally rid of the bodily, all the discomforts. When you're trying to think you're outside the body, a time comes, the bodily, all the alarm, the bodily biological alarm system, that just falls off. You are no more aware of the bodily feelings. You really start feeling you pervade everywhere. You are no more limited within the body. That is mahavideha. Videha means without body. Mahavideha means a sensation where all the bodily feelings accompanied by that crossing of the boundary, that is no more there. This has totally fallen off. You feel that you are pervading the entire space, cosmos. So you have become something like non-local. When it happens, through this sangyama, it is possible, it happens. Then what happens? Tatah prakasha avarana kshaya. Now the grossest of all the veil is that I am the body. This falls off. Unless we get rid of the feeling that I am the body, it is almost impossible to go to the higher rungs of spiritual realization. So this, though, has been accounted as a supernatural power, but this practice actually helps in our spiritual growth. That the more you can do that, the more you will find the bodily feeling is falling off. Because any awareness which localizes our awareness is a diseased state, as we told again and again. That as per the spiritual illumination is concerned, we have to go beyond the localization of our awareness. That when I am healthy, what's the sign of health? My life is throbbing through the entire body. Just see a small child, even it has fallen while playing, it has a small cut, it's not aware of it. It immediately gets up, starts running. It's so full of life. When it comes back home, the parent sees there is some cut and says, oh, when had you had this bruise? You haven't noticed. His health is throbbing through the entire body. Now, when we grow, start getting old, a little pain, our entire attention goes there. A headache, my total attention will be going there. So what is happening? The attention, the awareness which is supposed to permeate the entire body is now getting localized to my head or to my heart. I have a heartache. I have, my knees are paining, whatever you may say. This localization speaks of dis-ease. My ease is no more there. Ease has gone. That is disease. So the more I can go beyond this localization, the more healthy you are. In spiritual sense also, we are more healthy when we can go beyond this localization, sense of localization that I am the body. And that enables you to progress farther in your spiritual journey. So that way, this is the practice which will be helping us in our spiritual journey. Vahi akalpita vritti. When you're imagining yourself outside, that imagination is no more imagination. Kalpana means imagination. Akalpita is negation. You really start feeling that. Mahavideha. At the first, you feel both within and without. With the practice, what happens? All the feelings which are within, that gets totally negated. You feel you're pervading the entire space. That is the Mahavideha. When it happens, then all the veil of ignorance, that starts falling off. Because the greatest veil is that I am this limited psychophysical existence. That starts falling off. So now let us proceed to the 44th sutra, the next sutra. What it is speaking of? It actually speaks of science. You will find in the commentaries so many things have been mentioned. But yes, maybe they may be true, but we can relate to these sutras just with our day-to-day science. Yoga Sutra is a science of concentration. If you're using it for your spiritual journey, well, it will take you spiritual illumination. But as it is a science of concentration, it doesn't mean only the spiritual evolution. If the concentration is on some material things, that also is going to result in scientific discoveries. And here, the Yoga Sutra, being a science of concentration, deals with all sorts of concentration. So what is the concentration here spoken of? Sthula, Swarupa, Shukshma, Anvaya, Arthatva, Samyamat, Bhuta Jaya. You develop the mastery over Bhuta, of all this materials of the Bhuta, means all the elements, mastery of the elements, of all the things which you see in the universe. You have control, mastery over that. How? By concentrating on Samyama, concentrating on Sthula, the grossness of the thing. Gradually that concentration leads to the Shukshma, that's to the Swarupa, the essential characteristic of it. Then it leads to the subtlety, the Sukshma. Anvaya means the fundamental laws that governs it. And last is Arthatva, what role it has to play in our day-to-day life, how it can help us. So what it is speaking is very interesting. Just take a magnet. To give an example, Sthula, when you see a piece of magnet, it appears just to be an iron bar. It's an iron bar. So as per the grossness is concerned, it looks like an iron bar. But now suddenly you find if some iron filings are placed or some other iron is placed, it is attracting. So now you know its essential character. It looks, as a gross thing, it looks like an iron bar, but essentially its swarupa is that it attracts iron. It's not just an ordinary iron bar. It has that power to attract the iron filings. That is its swarupa. And then you go to the subtlety. Why it, then if you ask why it is attracting the iron filings, how it is different from an ordinary iron bar. And then you go to the science, that from this contemplation, the science evolves. The sciences came that way. How? That a magnet is an iron bar. In an ordinary iron bar, there are magnetic dipoles, which are all scattered. So the north pole of one magnetic dipole is negating the other as they are scattered, as they're in different directions, they're scattered. So the net magnetic field is zero there. But this iron bar, this special iron bar, here what has happened? All the magnetic dipoles have been aligned. So you get a south pole in one direction, north pole in one direction, and that's why the magnetism is finding expression there. So now the subtlety, by concentrating, see, this all the scientific discoveries are happening, that iron bar becomes a magnet when all the dipoles get aligned. So in such a way that the north poles are in one direction and the south poles are in another direction. So from this, after this, what you find? The fundamental laws that govern it. That if I place the iron filings, I know there's a magnetism, and this magnetism follows certain laws. The magnetic laws are there. By studying the way the filings, these iron filings are getting aligned around the magnet, I discover the magnetic laws. That is the anvaya, the fundamental laws that govern it. Once I know that, once I know this, first I saw the iron bar, then I came to know that it is a magnet, and then I came to know the magnetic laws. Now I can use it for various purposes. Your generator, for generating electricity, needs a magnet. So in so many ways, it can serve our purpose. So now I have done Bhuta Jaya. What does Bhuta Jaya? That now this serves my purpose. I have full control over it. Till I knew its nature, I had no control over it. It was just an ordinary iron bar. Now I have full control over it. We as a human being have developed control over nature just by this. As simple as that. By concentrating on the sthula, first the gross, try to find out its essential characteristic, then go to the real subtlety of it, and try to get the knowledge, all the knowledge of the laws which is governed, by which it is governed, and then how it serves the purpose, arthatva. So this is the simple way. This is the only way of developing mastery over the elements. So there's a famous statement of Francis Bacon that knowledge is power. So that's what it means. So just by having the knowledge of the thing, you gain power over it. Then this knowledge is power. Francis Bacon has himself explained this, his own statement, by a wonderful allegory. What he used to say, that the Mother Earth is just like a widow, a lady who has a lot of treasure, and she doesn't want to share her treasure with others. And one day the dacoits come and force all the treasure from her, takes away. So Mother Earth is like that lady with a lot of treasures. And we, the so-called the humans, are like those dacoits. With our knowledge, we force. The Mother Nature by itself doesn't want. We are forcing out. That's how we discovered the use of fire. The fire, by seeing which all other animals run away. We use it as our power. So the way we have learned the use of will, fire, all these discoveries had a huge leap in our civilization, one after another. So all these are aspects of Bhuta Jaya, this control. With your knowledge, you are having control over the nature. So that's what is being spoken of. Sthula, Swarupa, Shukshmanva, Arthatva. So when you have it, then what results, what ensues from it? This next sutra, we always go for some supernatural explanation, but we will try to understand that even we need not go for supernatural explanation. Maybe it's possible, but in the modern science, there are things which can easily, very plainly explain this type of sutras. What's that? Tata animadi pradur bhava kaya sampat tat dharma anabhighata cha tata animadi. Animadi means becoming small. There are ashta siddhis which has been spoken of. So by adi means etc. Actually, all the 8 siddhis you can gain by having control over the nature. The control which you have by studying the sthula, swarupa, shukshma, anvaya, arthatva, which we studied in the previous sutra. By that, when you know the nature of a thing, you can develop siddhi, tremendous power over it. What are those power? Animadi. That's ability to reduce it to a very small, like a nanoparticle. Anima, laghima. Laghima means to reduce it weight almost to zero. So now always till now, we always thought that the yogi can become something very small. He can be something very light, laghima, mahima. He like Hanumana, he can just grow in size. We know that Hanumana can reduce his size, grow in size, and we all try to just interpret this sutra that way. But there is an easier way to understand. It is actually speaking of science. We will come to it. Prapti, to reach out far off. Prakamya, ability to attain the kamya means goal. Prakamya means prakrishta rupena kamya, to attain the desired goal in a very nice way. Means you just fulfill your desires, accomplish your goal with full perfection. That is the prakamya. Next is Vashitva, the power to hypnotize, to influence others. Then the 7th is Ishitritva, the ability to control the external resources, the natural resources. And the last one is Yatra Kama Vasaitva. Yatra Kama Vasaitva means to have control over the living creatures. So we always take it personally and think that all the supernatural powers develop. Maybe it's true, but in the modern science, when once you develop the control of the nature, nowadays you can relate this sutra wonderfully with all the discoveries. Anima, just let us take, before the election, a political party wants to win the election so that it can run the government. It speaks of power. It speaks of that last two things, Ishitritva and Yatra Kama Vasaitva. That I have to, that as if I can run the government, I have the control over all the resource the country has. I have control over the people. What laws I will make, how I will regulate, I have control. So for that, how it starts? Sitting, a politician, most probably sitting in his office. He need not have to even meet the people. Delivers a lecture through the media. Through some this nowadays you can say that there's just the way we are taking the class. Maybe it's say some Zoom, or maybe it's in the TV transmission center. What is happening? The lecture is recorded. It is getting converted into something which is stored in a small IC chip. Your form, your voice, everything is getting there. And then we can transmit it, the electromagnetic transmission. That has no weight. The IC chip speaks of anima. It has been reduced to that small information. All the information, the huge informations now which we can store in the IC chip speaks of anima. Just with a small, the entire world can be in your pocket, in the mobile phone, the USB, the thing which you have in your pocket. So much of information, everything is being compact in that IC chip. Anima, laghima, it can be transmitted through the electromagnetic transmission, which has no weight. It has been reduced to zero. Mahima, once it is transmitted, you can have larger than life, big screens where the politician's lecture is being again transmitted People can just see far off. You may be sitting thousands of kilometers away. And that's the prapti. You can reach out. Prapti means the next fourth, able to reach out. Just by this transmission, you're sitting in one place, it is going to the entire country, your lecture. Prakamya. Why you're doing all those things? To win the election. You can, with all these things, you are just trying to attain a particular desired goal. Prakamya, to go for, to win the elections. And how you do it? Through all this propaganda, all this political propaganda you have taken. By that, I'm hypnotizing, influencing the people. The people start thinking. They start visualizing a very nice future. Oh yes, he is just assuring with this type of all these goals he has set, it is going to really change the destiny of the nation, country. And you get hypnotized, influenced. Vashitva, that is there. And once with all this political propaganda, you win the election. Sitting in your political office, you have done that. And then comes Ishitritva. Now you are running the government. You have control over all the resource. And Yatra Kama Va Saitva. You have control over the people. So just see, once you have the Bhuta Jaya, maybe previously, most probably, that they were having that capability to use their own psyche as the IC chip. Just the way. After all, entire science is a very poor imitation of nature. It's a very poor imitation of nature. Why it's a poor imitation? Just now we know with all our science that how perfectly the entire system works. How minutely, just when, to give a common example, this you will find may find it interesting. See, when those who have the very severe diabetes, type 1 diabetes, they are in insulin. They have to be in insulin. For them, a big problem is there. What's the big problem? Suppose for some reason they take very less food one day. But as they're taking insulin injection, but they take very less food, now the insulin is more compared to the sugar intake. As a result, the sugar level drops, and suddenly he will find that his head is he's about to faint off. He's just about to faint. He's feeling dizzy, and he has to take some sugar. Now the question, very important question, that when I am in insulin injection and I cannot fast, then I have to take normal diet. Otherwise, my sugar will fall off. A very interesting thing. Suppose someone has started doing hunger strike for some agitation. Maybe they are without food for 3-4 days. Some maybe a bit more. But for them also, they're not taking food. The body is secreting insulin. So they are supposed to faint. But it doesn't happen. They're quite okay. Just see that our body is so efficient. How it's that? When you're not taking food, the insulin secretion, when it is happening normally, naturally, it drops. There's a wonderful regulation, as there is a natural regulator within the body. But when I'm taking external insulation, then I have no control over it. The sugar level will fall. But when I am normal, I'm not taking insulin. When I'm not taking food, the insulin level also will drop. So what we are speaking, this body is a wonderful mechanism, and we are trying to imitate it more and more. As a result, what has happened? Now we boast that a person who is supposed to die is in hospital for 30 days with all sorts of tubes running throughout the body. And the science will say, the doctor will say you, just the way your body secretes the hormone, it's regulated, we have discovered how this regulation is done. And that's how the life is sustained for 30 days, 40 days. Yes, in some cases, when you have not gone to coma, it revives you back. But in most of the cases, what happens? You stay in that state for a prolonged time, in that vegetative state. At last, the death is there. The patient dies. Now, with all this boasting, what we have done? We have imitated the nature. The way the nature will be regulating my hormones, that I have imitated. But can I make him walk? Can I make him just to be a normal person? No, he's lying. He is lying there in a total vegetative state. That's why it's a very poor imitation of nature. What we are doing is exactly is very poor imitation of nature. So all these supernatural powers is actually imitation of the nature, nothing else, with what we have attained in the science. So when sutras has been written thousands of years back, it's most probably very genuine. And those days, when the entire experiment was with the psyche itself, they never took the experiment outside with the outside material. Now we are doing with the outside material, we are attaining all those success there. But in those days, all the thing was with the psyche. And we are finding the psyche is almost parallel with the information technology now. So that's the experiment, which instead of resorting to the external things, if we would have done with the psyche, most probably we could have achieved the same results, or maybe in a far better way. But this all shows, as we have attained them with our science at present, to a great extent, that anima, laghima we are explaining, that is just with the example of that political, that all the propaganda, winning election, we are resorting to the bhuta. You have now control over this information technology is a product of science. You have done bhuta jaya. You have control over the so-called the nature. To a certain extent, you have control. With that, you are getting the power. So that shows that the same thing, if we can do with the psyche, most probably we can do it in a much better way. So we are not denying that all those things are not possible. They are possible, but we see no examples at present. But with this poor imitation of nature, we can be assured of the fact that yes, instead of trying to do it with some external material, if we can make our own psyche as the laboratory, our own mind as the laboratory, and experiment on it, it is quite reasonable and it is scientific that all those things are possible. So that's being spoken of. So in this sutra, when they speak of animadi, this actually speaks of these 8 siddhis, which you develop by bhuta jaya, which has been spoken of in the previous sutra. And not only that, you get dharma anabhighata. Just see that you can move through the solid. They're saying the liquid won't drench you, won't drown you. You can pass through the liquid, through the air, through the solid. Nothing can obstruct you. Yes, that's what, with the same example you will find that once you deliver the speech, nothing is in the world. This solid, you are within the walls of your office. The walls that you are penetrating, there's no liquid, nothing, there's no gaseous state, nothing can obstruct. The electromagnetic waves can transmit, and you are reaching the mass for thousands of miles without any obstruction. So nothing can stop you, non-obstruction. And the other thing is kaya sampat. When you are experimenting with this bhuta, you get all the supernatural power, and even you're doing with your physic. What happened? It speaks of the glorification of the body. You develop this beauty, complexion, strength, all those things come. That has been spoken of in the 46th sutra. That what is kaya sampat, rupa, lavanya, bala, vajra, sanghatvat, kaya sampat. What is this kaya sampat which has been spoken of in the previous sutra? The glorification of the body. What it is a beauty. Yes, by knowing the science of that, nowadays you find that in the market there are so many products that use this is good for your skin. It's after all bhuta jaya, and they do to a certain extent. They say that your skins won't have wrinkles. Yes, to a certain extent bhuta jaya has been done, that you look old you look much younger with all those plastic surgery and all. So what has happened? The science has developed that in such a way that it can to certain extent enhance your beauty, your complexion, and all those, your strength, with all the science available for that. Not only either gyms, the trainers, they will train you in such a way that with a scientific approach, you can gain tremendous strength, and that strength can be like vajra. That has been said. This So this adamantine strength, Vajra Sanghana Natva. Sanghana Natva is Vajra Sanghana Natva is adamantine strength you develop by all those scientific procedure which is now applied to your body. So that's all possible, that even we to certain extent experience it in our day-to-day life with all the modern advancement in science and technology. The 47th Sutra, what it is speaking of, it is again something related to our spiritual journey. Though it is a supernatural power, but it will help us spiritually. What is that? Grahana Swarupa Asmita Anvaya Arthatva Samyamat Indriya Jaya. So these terms actually confuses us, but it is speaking something which we have discussed so many times. Grahana means perception. Swarupa, the experience which results from that perception. Asmita, the sense of ego underlying the knowledge acquired through that perception. Anvaya, the knowledge that results from that experience. Arthatva, the purpose of that knowledge. What it is speaking. Once you know this thing, you can develop the capacity of Indriya Jaya. You can have control over your own senses. What it is speaking, Grahana. So we have discussed. So why we do not have any control over Indriyas? That why we have discussed so many times, because we are obsessed. Why we are obsessed? That we find that though I'm trying, I find that something is harming me, but my mind tends to take me there again and again. All the crimes are done that way. Most probably sometimes the criminal are unable, that they are kept in the jail not to punish them. Because the society knows if they are kept in the society free, their mind is prone to crime, means they cannot restrict themselves. They have to be kept in a protected way. It's not to punish them. The moment you keep them in society, they're prone. They cannot stop themselves. They don't want to be in jail, but they have to be segregated. Why it happens? Because of obsession. How that obsession comes? Because we forget the purpose, the arthatva, which has been spoken of in this sutra. Grahana Swarupa Asmita Anvaya Arthatva. That what is the purpose? That why I am the thing which I'm resorting to, what's the purpose, we forget. And we get attached to the means, to the neural pathway, which we have described so many times. That the primitive man, suppose that, that he sees a fruit. The seeing, that grahana means perception. He sees the fruit. He tastes it and experiences its swarupa. Then he finds, oh, it is sweet. Swarupa is, the first he sees it. That is the grahana, seeing. And then Swarupa is, it's after tasting, he finds the sweetness is the Swarupa, it is essence. And then the ego gets attached to it. Oh, it is good. It tastes nice. It is not harmful. It nourishes me. So that sweetness is getting linked with that asmita, my ego. This is good. And then anvaya. What's the result which comes out of it? That's yes. All the sweet fruits which are in nature, it is not going to kill me. It is going to I'm going to thrive if I just sustain on them. So this is the knowledge which you get out of it. And from that, the arthatva. What is the arthatva? That yes, my purpose to gather sweet fruits is for my sustenance. And now in time, as we told again and again, when the neural pathway is formed, that to get sweet fruits, sweet herbs, I forget the purpose. I get obsessed. I start indulging. And all the lifestyle disease comes from it. Diabetes, what has happened? You forgot the arthatva, the purpose. So whenever we are endeavoring for something, if always we keep the purpose in mind, that why we are doing it, then the chance of getting obsessed by it, that gets negated. There is no chance for it. So this is that's why it's called, what you say, the samyama. You have to concentrate on it. That in English, that proverb is there, that the sign of purity is vigilance. The moment you are not vigilant, you get entrapped. If we are vigilant, always at every time, whatever we are going to do, what's the purpose? Is it going to do me harm or is it going to help me? that how much certain food is good for me is after, if I just take more than that out of obsession, it is going to harm me. Not only too much, sometimes even not taking food can become an obsession. Sometimes, especially we find that nowadays that to keep yourself slim and trim, you will be avoiding food. To a certain extent, it is good. But again, that becomes obsession, and that results even in death. You will become skin and bone. Even you won't have the tendency to eat food. It becomes a psychological disease. I've immediately forgot the name. It's a very severe state where you don't even feel like taking food. You have to grown total aversion for it. Why it has happened? Again, you forgot the purpose. Why were you doing it? It was just to maintain the fitness, but you forgot. You now became obsessed to avoid food. So sometimes we get indulged, and sometimes even in avoiding, we get obsessed. So if we don't forget, then we develop the control over our senses, the Indriya Jaya. So once you have that power, what's the result? Tato manojavitvam, the 48th sutra. The result which ensues from this practice, tato manojavitvam, vikarana bhava pradhana jaya cha. Manojavitvam. What it means? That you now develop a designed reflex. When what's the reflex? When your mind is not required, some response of your body is even faster than the mind. To give an example, if your knee in certain position, if someone hits you, the knee will have a jerk. As they say, even if your mind, if you're sleeping, if it is done, the leg will have a jerk. When you're sleeping, if someone touches your eyeball, immediately you will respond. That though your active mind is not taking any decision, this is reflex. So manojavita means faster than mind. It actually means the reflex. Vikarana bhava means what? The ability of the organs to function independent of the mind. So this together speaks of reflex. So we have reflexes that even when I'm sleeping, if some hot body touches my hand, I won't have to take any conscious decision. My hand automatically will get repelled from it. It's a reflex. By constantly having that, practicing that awareness of that, what is the purpose of my all these pursuits, sensual pursuits, you can change your reflex. You can design your reflex. The reflex can change. That's me mentioned in the sutra. And that will help you in getting control over the nature. Pradhana. This pradhana is the nature. You develop power over the nature. The nature can no more lure you because you have designed your reflex. Our reflexes at present are by default programmed, but we can design them. We need not have to respond as per the default mode. We can design them and change the responses. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it has been mentioned that an illumined soul, what happens when we are in presence of the sense objects, our indriyas are drawn towards it. But for one who is Sthita Pragya, like a tortoise, the limbs are gathered inside the shell. This in the Bhagavad Gita, this example they have given. When the tortoise sees any danger, immediately its limbs will go inside the shell. For a realized soul, for the soul who is illumined, similarly, instead of getting drawn towards objects, is drawn in. This yada sangharate chayam kurmongani ba sarvasya in Bhagavad Gita is mentioned. So what has happened for a soul who is spiritually evolved, his reflex has changed. For ordinary person, their indriyas, he is drawn, the indriyas are lured by it. But for him, he has designed in such a way that they move away from it. So that's been spoken of here in this sutra. By constantly keeping the mind vigilant about the purpose for which I am doing anything, my reflex will change. It will just change. And you won't have to take a conscious decision, oh, I shouldn't do this. Automatically, you will be repelled back. There's a wonderful example which we gave again and again in the life of Ramakrishna. When he was doing his sadhana, he resolved that he won't touch any metal because the coins are made of metal. it speaks of wealth. So as he wanted to depend fully on divine, he took a resolution, I won't touch coin. So he went to that extent that any metal I won't touch. After all, metal speaks of wealth. How? That if for food I need a metal plate, but is it fact? Actually, in the olden days, we used to take it on a banana leaf. So metal plate actually speaks of wealth. Banana leaf is in nature. You can go and just have it and have food on it. So even a metal plate speaks of wealth. So anything metal, I avoid. He took a resolution. So it was a conscious resolution at the beginning. But what happened? He had that Indriya Jaya. How? It became reflex. Even unconsciously, if any metal is to touch, he used to touch a metal unconsciously, it will be like a scorpion bite. And he told his devotees that I cannot touch, I cannot just bear the touch of metal. Narendranath thought it is just this exaggerated statement. How can it be? So one day he kept some coin beneath the mattress of his bed when he was not in his room. So we must understand this. In India, mattress means it's something very thin. It's not the thick mattress. In the tropical weather, we use some very thin mat. So below that, he kept it. When Ramakrishna returned to his room, sat on his bed over the mat, Naren was observing to see that he says that any metal, if he touches, he immediately gets a sting, like a plain like a sting of a scorpion. Is it really true? So he was hiding himself and observing. Ramakrishna jumped up and called his nephew, please just remove the mat and see if something is there. And the coin was found out. And Ramakrishna immediately realized someone, just to test him, has kept the coin. And he found Narendra was there. He was happy that he was being tested. He told that just always be, before having faith in me, you should minutely observe me. So he was happy. He was not angry on him. But Naren had a big lesson that yes, that education, the real education is the nervous association of ideas. That you internalize an idea in such a way, it just changes your reflex. Unless it does that, that's Ramakrishna, that's why I always used to say, in his life, he has internalized the values. It changed his reflex. That's why I used to say, your education is just like the vulture soaring high in the sky. The vulture soars high in the sky, but its total focus is on the carrion, some dead, rotten flesh in the ground, in some pit. In some pit, some rotten flesh is there. Its attention is there. It's soaring very high. With all our degrees, with all our qualifications, we soar high. With all our attention is on the carrion, is the rotten flesh. So why we haven't internalized the values? It has not in any way changed our reflexes. We couldn't design our reflex. It has not internalized. So that's why it is told that once you develop that capacity, it's not only you have to consciously decide that I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. Your reflex will change spontaneously, even faster than the mind decision. That's why it's mano javitvam. It's faster than the mind. Your senses will react to the situation in a way where the mind did not come to picture. Vikarana bhava speaks of that the functioning of the or sense organs, even irrespective of the mind. Vikarana bhava. There is no need. Karana means the indriyas. In Sanskrit, if you know the words, it's very interesting. Karana. All the indriyas are called the karana. Vikarana means indriyas without this mano, without the mind. The indriyas react without the mind. So this words confuses us, but actually speaking of the reflex. In the reflex, the mind is not required. Your body, some part is reacting to a situation without the decision of the mind. Here also the same thing happens, but you have designed it. It's no more default. And that's why it is just the opposite of the default mode, which is common for the entire humanity. So that's been spoken of here. Tato manojavitvam, vikarana bhava, and pradhana. That's how you develop the control over the nature. The last sutra with which we will end this today's discussion, and this is the last sutra which speaks of the Vibhuti. From the 50th sutra, we will have the discussion on the last section, the Kaivalya. It will be the introduction of the Kaivalya Pada. So what the 49th sutra is speaking? Sattva Purusha Anyata Khyati Matrasya Sarva Bhava Adhishtatritvam Sarvagyatritvam Cha. Adhishtatritva means omnipotence. Sarvagyatritva means omniscience. So you develop omnipotence and omniscience. How? Swattva Purusha Anyata Khyati Matrasya. Sattva means the Buddhi, Purusha. Once you can distinguish between these two, we have discussed it earlier, so we won't take much time in this sutra. Once you have differentiated these two, you know the Buddhi to be separate from the Purusha. Then what happens? You develop omnipotence. How? We have discussed so many times that as you have now, what you say, that developed, that total discrimination. So as a result, what happens? All the mental modules falls off, and you develop the power to access any of the module, and you open up the infinite possibilities. The nature has infinite modules. It is because of our bias we are fixed to a particular module. Once, because of discrimination, you have lost the bias. Now you can download anything. As we told, that in internet, so many things are there. It is our bias which keeps us fixed to particular search, but we can search anything. So the moment you develop that power of discrimination, so now your filter machine, that Buddhi is a filter machine, it can download anything and everything, giving you omnipotence. And omniscience, that all-knowingness, how it comes? Again, the same. It is a bias which restricts our knowledge. There's a wonderful example in Vedanta, in yoga, that is ordinary stump, the trunk of the tree which has fallen, a stump is there in the corner of a park, in the dark, when in the twilight hours, in the dark, a small child, the play is over, now wants to go back home, sees his in search of his parents. The parents will take him back. Seeing the stump, thinks that to be the parent thinks it to be the child. Someone is in search of his beloved, the sweetheart, the lover. The girl thinks him to be the lover. The boy thinks him to be the girl. The police who is in search of the thief thinks it to be the thief. The thief who is running away from the police thinks the stuff to be the police. So what has happened? My bias doesn't allow me to see the stump as the stump. So in our life, all our knowledge gets restricted because of all those biases. I am this, I am that, and then immediately your knowledge is restricted. So all those biases, unless it falls off, you can never have an all-comprehensive knowledge. As Sri Ramakrishna's, that example again we give, that two players were playing chess. The third one was observing. The one who was observing was saying the correct move. The players were faltering. Why they were faltering the steps? Because most of their mind were engaged with the apprehension, that with expectation, I have to win. The apprehension, the fear, I may lose. So they cannot give the full mind to the game. The one who is observing, his mind is free from all those apprehensions, all those expectations, fully focused on the game. So he says the correct move. Onlooker says the correct move. So your knowledge becomes all comprehensive, and all expectations, all apprehensions, fears fall off, all the bias fall off. You see yourself objectively. And then that opens up the knowledge of the thing as it is, free from all the bias. So you become omniscience, you become omnipotent. So with this, all the sutras dealing with the Vibhutis ends. From the 50th sutra, the introduction of the Kaivalya part of the last chapter will start, which we will take up again in the next class. So with this, we stop our discussion. Thank you all. Namaskar.